telling the whole world what a country should be. United we stand in America, hand in hand in America, together as one in a land that we love. United we stand in America.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Mary Byrne, and I'm here with a guest today, Jodi Widhalm. I always have to get that
Good
right.
job.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is Changing Times. Today is October 9, a beautiful Wednesday morning here in the Ozarks. And I'm excited to share Jodi's expertise and knowledge with you about Amendment 3, which is a big issue here in Missouri, but it's not the only state that has a proposed amendment to the state constitution elevating abortion to access to abortion to a right, which is extremely dangerous. And we're going to get into that, but before we get started in our conversation, I'm going to tell you three things. One, my co-host Lynn Morris is unable to be with us today because his wife, who's doing the driving for him as he gets fitted for his prosthetic, had her own unfortunate event. And so she's home resting, and Lynn is working from home and unable to be with us today. The second thing I want to share with you is that we have two sponsors to whom we are very grateful for sponsoring this show. One is Brad Pistole of Trinity Insurance and Financial Services. We've had Brad on this show to explain basically his ministry / business to provide stable retirement funding for his clients. And his phone number is 417-581-9222. He's a wonderful human being and a very knowledgeable person, particularly in the area of finance for retirement. Annuities is his specialty. He's nationally known. And if you want to feel confident in getting accurate information, give Brett a call and see if his services can meet your needs. But he's all about service to people. Our second sponsor is Springfield Nissan and Springfield Kia. We've had their general sales manager, Aaron Swanson, on this show, and he explained again how his upbringing, his faith in the Christian church, informed his dealing with people in his business, Springfield Nissan and Springfield Kia. His number is 417-882-3838, and I highly recommend. As a matter of fact, I did go with a friend to shop there at Springfield Nissan and Kia, and I was very impressed with the accommodation and the service that the salespeople were offering to my friend. I'm sure they'll treat you just as well. So the third thing I want to tell you is that Missouri is all abuzz with discussion about Amendment 3. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, God has his ways. The opposition that is sponsoring the pro-abortion side of this issue has a lot of money, and they are running television ads that we certainly can't compete with. Those of us who understand that man is made in the image of God. God loves his creation, and he loves his babies even before they're born. And so it's an emotional experience to be pregnant, especially if it was unexpected and it's a single mom. Mm-hmm. And so we honor that anxiety and that emotion, and we are not diminishing her experience at all. However, there are alternative choices that offer life, speak life over the state of Missouri and over that mom and over her baby.
Yes.
And so I want to introduce to you my friend Jodi Widhalm. I've known Jodi for a couple of years because she and I are up at the Capitol together.
Yeah.
And she's very effective communicator, and you run a blog, Jodi Grace Ministries.
I
right?
do. Yep.
So tell me how all of that got started, so our audience knows how they can access more information. We'll just start out with
Sure.
that. What started your Jodi Grace Ministries?
Truly just grave concern, as most of the grassroots, across Missouri, grave concern for the future of our nation, for the future of Missouri, and just a compelling from the Lord, honestly.
And you're a mom of how many boys?
4 boys.
There you are.
Yeah, 4 boys. So they're ages 13 to 22 right now. And so I've got these 4 boys who I want to have a future full of freedom and an ability to, raise families and give me grandchildren and all those great things. And so after COVID and the election in 2020, I was very concerned and just began to pray and felt very called. I live in Jefferson City, so I should say that. So I'm just a few minutes really from the Capitol. And
you were gracious enough to drive all that way to come here and be with us in studio. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I'd love to do this because my heart really is to educate. And so much like you, my background is education. I was an elementary school teacher back in the day. And when I got familiar with the Capitol and Missouri government, I realized that the people, the voters, the people, they really don't understand what's going on. And so I just have really a desire to help people understand the ins and the outs, and especially to help believers.
Well, the big reveal for
Understand.
me going up there was that the legislators don't understand
They
what's going
don't
on either.
oftentimes.
They've
Yes,
come
that's
through
true.
an education system that didn't equip them
Right.
to understand the Constitution, understand how the bills they file should be aligned to that Constitution, and that their true accountability comes from the voters,
The
not
people.
the lobbyists.
Right.
Right.
And
And if
you're
the people
s-
don't show up, then that message does not
Right.
get emphasized to
Right.
them. Yeah.
Right. You have such a background. I love your message oftentimes because you really do understand the big picture. And I think oftentimes people, both citizens and the legislators, they really don't understand the powers behind these movements that are happening. The Marxism, the global agenda, the sustainable development goals, all of those types of things. I don't think that most people have a great understanding for. And I love your messages because you do, and you're trying to educate people about those
things. It
things.
puts it in context. It
Yeah.
kind of shows that this is not a slow erosion of man's nobility and moral character. This is a deliberate
Right.
operation
Right.
to dehumanize, demoralize, and control.
Yeah.
And there's been money behind this for a century.
Yeah,
They've
and I
known
think
what they
this
were doing.
amendment is part of that.
It is. It absolutely is. I was reading about the Frankfurt School this morning because that's how I get my kicks. Is and one of their main advocates, main voices in the Frankfurt School was a guy named Herbert Marcuse. They were German, but they were organized in the Frankfurt School to figure out a way to create revolution that worked in Russia because of the huge disparity between the very rich and the poor. So the people were the proletariat, the rich, if you remember, business, bourgeois, and people, proletariat. Then the whole point Marx was getting at was that you could create a clash between these groups. When they tried to do the same thing over here in the United States, it didn't work because we had a broad and happy middle class and a great group of people, large group of people who were independent entrepreneurs. So a number of things they had to do was to crush the middle class entrepreneurship, and they had to discredit the biblical worldview that was part of this founding. And sexual revolution was the way to do that. If you could take away the morals of the sexual culture that was part of church teaching, the sanctity of life, the sanctity of family, the accountability to God for your choices, and not just for punishment, but these were, if your designer put the rules in place to say this is the best way you work. It's kind of like following the manufacturer's manual for a car. It's like, if you want it to run well, this is how you treat it. And God did the same thing for our bodies.
Right.
And one of the things that we have to understand, being made in the image of God, is that he's telling us, you were made for life. You were made for us together, God and man, to enjoy relationship. And we both will be happy because I enjoy you, you will learn to enjoy me, and this will be my God kingdom family. Right? And each baby, my favorite way to teach this lesson is Jesus came as a baby. He didn't just appear. He arrived through the same process God had ordained and sanctified for all of us, right? Adam was the only one without a navel.
Right.
Jesus came in the lineage of man to show the blessedness of that process. And Mary was an unwed mother.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. And I think, I mean, what an example, right?
Yeah.
Just in that process, the things they would have had to have dealt with culturally.
Right.
The shame that she would have carried.
She was up for
The
stoning.
yeah.
And her family knew that. She said, I have to go. And they go, oh, yeah, I guess you do. But that didn't mean they didn't love her.
Right.
And it didn't mean she wasn't protected.
Right.
And eventually, Joseph became her protector. So God provided. But yeah, she knew all of that. And I think that's what I'm amazed at, is how God participated in all aspects of man's experience, including that one.
Yeah.
So we're not here to condemn. We're not here to judge. We're here to speak life over babies the way God does, right?
Yep.
Okay, take it away.
Yep. Well, I think, I would probably assume that most of your listeners, if they're tuning in and they know you and they know the show, probably the majority of them would feel the same way, or at least somewhat the same way as we do as far as abortion is concerned. Definitely this is an amendment that is allowing abortion, not only, and I think back to your point earlier, the churches now have also been so infiltrated with these other lines of thinking and philosophies. They don't even realize it, I don't believe.
Let me take this back to your comment about Marxism in the big picture. Okay, this same Frankfurt school had a strategy called capturing the robes. And the robes included the judiciary, the court system, and which this law is a part.
Yes.
The academics that would nurture and prepare the teachers for the classroom, right? So the universities were captured, and the clergy,
Yes.
who also wore the robes.
Right.
Right? So you take
Right.
those three groups, you infiltrate them, and basically compromise them
Right.
away from the scriptures, and introduce this idea that Marxism is a better freedom
Right.
than the liberty that God gave us, and that's what they call it,
Right.
reproductive freedom. Then it sounds good.
It does.
But that's what the deceiver does.
Right. And everybody wants a choice. Everybody does want freedom.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, I think in a lot of our churches, we have a large variety of pro-life people. Even when you say I'm pro-life, that means a lot of different things to different people, even within the church. So we've got believers who are in agreement that we should be making exceptions for rape and incest. We have, people that believe you should be able to have a choice or abortion's okay up to a certain, number of weeks.
Gestation.
Gestation. So there's a lot of a lot of sort of controversy even within the pro-life movement as far as what that actually means and what people believe in. But this amendment, even if you're one of the people who would be like, well, I believe that it's okay for rape and incest, I believe we can have that conversation a different day. But this amendment is so much more than just an exception for rape or incest. It's so much more than just abortion up until 12 weeks or 15 weeks or whatever. This is abortion all the way up until birth.
Unfettered. Unfettered access,
Yes.
even for minors.
Yes, for minors. And this is because of the way the language is. In that second section, it says the government shall not deny or infringe upon a person. And that term, person, includes children.
Yes.
And adults.
And just to put this in context, we're talking about Amendment 3 of Missouri on the Missouri ballot, but there are 10 states throughout the country that have similar proposals for amendments to their constitution. This came about because of the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe versus Wade. This is not unique to Missouri. This is what the abortion industry went after as soon as Roe versus Wade was overturned. So I want to mention to our listeners, because we are nationwide, the other states that have similar problems coming up on their ballots: Arizona, South Dakota, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, and New York. Personally, it's my opinion that Missouri is one of the most virulent because Missouri was the first out of the gate to be abortion-free.
Right.
So they're going to make an example out
Right.
of us, right? Okay. Yes, person. And I did some research into that.
Yeah.
Again, it's how I get my kicks. And that whole definition of the child as person is the document from the UN, right? The
So,
Year of the
right.
Child,
Yeah.
freedom, rights,
Right.
the rights of the child,
Right.
which sounded good in 1989,
And-
because they market it as, every child has the right to be loved.
Sure. And that's true.
Yeah.
There are some things about that we would even agree with. They have a right to safety. They have a right to good parents, a good home, being loved, having, a nurturing environment.
But
Of
just
course,
what
we
you
all
said,
believe
good
that.
parents. Who's the monitor of good
Of
parents?
that, yeah.
It's the government.
Right.
It's the government,
Right.
and that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's an intrusion of the government between the child and the parent.
Yeah. And that's a passionate topic of mine.
Yeah.
Because
Mama Bear.
Mama Bear comes out, and I've actually seen it. You've seen it in the Capitol. I think that a lot of our people in Missouri believe that we're a red state, we're conservative, we don't really have to worry about a lot of these things. That's the furthest thing from the truth. I have seen it myself, and the truth really, truly is that they are coming after our children.
Yes.
They literally want, ultimately, to take them from us physically away if we don't comply or agree with
They're only doing
their
it in
ideologies.
European countries.
Yes.
Yeah. They're
Yes.
doing it in the state of California.
Yes.
If you don't agree with the gender transition ideology, the state has the right to take the child away.
Yes.
And in fact, here in Springfield, we had a case where 2 teachers took a student home with them because the student, who was, and one of these teachers was a special education teacher. And of course, there was a lot of, you might say, communication manipulation.
Yeah.
So this didn't get too far. It was actually the Herzog Foundation that published the story, but it was a state rep down here who found the names of those 2 teachers. And that student said, I want to transition, but my parents won't let me. So the teachers took the child home.
Right. And if that situation occurred after if Amendment 3 would pass, there's a section in this particular amendment that says that we will not be able to hold liable anyone
That's right.
who is assisting some person trying to access their reproductive rights.
Which would mean school personnel.
Correct.
That's right. And so a lot of the discussion around this amendment has to do with abortion, but my particular aim is at the vague language that
Yes.
opens the door for what I call the school to Planned Parenthood pipeline. And it not just for abortion, but for the transition drugs.
Yes, definitely.
And because that's part of reproductive freedom.
Right.
Right? So this is a bigger monster than is in the typical narrative about this amendment. Yeah.
What our opponents would like for you to think is that this is only about abortion. They're just
And it's grown
removing
women
the
making their
ban.
decisions, yes.
People are going to get to make their own decisions, and that's a lie. The title of this amendment actually is it says this section shall be known as the Right to Reproductive Freedom
right.
Initiative. It does not say right to an abortion. It says right to reproductive freedom. And the words are everything, and the definitions are everything in
right.
these
Or
documents.
the absence
Or-
of definition.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So reproductive freedom, when we're talking about reproductive health, we're not just talking about abortion. We're talking about anything that would include reproductive organs. And that would include cloning even, IVF research, possibly even female genital mutilation, gender transition, and any and all future reproductive technologies.
Yeah.
And in the world that we live in today, honestly, there are things happening we never could have imagined just a decade ago.
Yeah.
So when we consider that it's all future procedures and technologies,
And putting it in the Constitution elevates it to a constitutional right.
yes.
So the legislature would have no authority over this.
No.
And the courts would have to rule according to it. No wiggle room. And essentially, parents lose all authority over their children. Yeah. For
And
this issue.
that's, I've gotten some, nasty emails and phone calls
Sorry.
over this, but I had somebody screaming at me on the phone the other day saying, do you really believe that they would let children do this without their parents' consent? And yes, I believe that.
Well, there's
Absolutely, I
cases
believe
already
that.
of children who have committed suicide after they were taken from the home, put in a clinic to undergo transition. It didn't help them. It caused more confusion, and because of this disintegration of what the child support system had been with the family, and what it was a female transitioning to male, what the medicines did to her head. Okay, that when she was out on her own, she stepped in front of a train. This is in California. That mom is still out there publicizing how the government interfered. I mean, she was a devout Catholic mom. This was a violation of her religious beliefs, but the court held for the schools.
Yeah,
Because of the
I
laws.
believe that.
Yeah.
And the truth really is what I think or what you think or your opinion, it doesn't matter so much. It matters what this actually says.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting because in the Missouri Constitution is the protection of freedom of conscience. This doesn't allow you to have
Does
that.
away with that. Right.
Which was one of the arguments in the Supreme Court case, is that this is not fully disclosing what gets canceled in
Correct.
terms of our statutes.
Right.
And we have a very liberal Supreme Court. I was not surprised they ruled the way they did.
Me either.
But that has implications for how you vote for Supreme Court judges
Yes.
this November 5th.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that one of the criticisms I've received is that, well, Jodi, the amendment doesn't actually say that.
Exactly.
No, it doesn't say that, and that is part of the problem.
That's right.
The way that it was crafted and drafted, they excluded things instead of including right? And so instead of being forthcoming and forthright and just spelling out
Transparent.
everything transparent, they wrote it in such a way as to hide. And I think that in section 3, here's a great example of that. It says, the first sentence says, the right to reproductive freedom shall not be denied, interfered with, delayed, or otherwise restricted. And that shall not means that we aren't able to restrict anything, even delay, it says in the list. So if I have a child who's, let's say, 12 or 13 or 14 and is struggling, and I'll be the first to admit in this world that we live in today, especially if our children are in these environments all day, every day, 5 days a week, they see it on TV. I think we do have a lot of children struggling.
See it in public libraries.
Yes, on shelves out there for everybody to see. Yes, I do believe we have a lot of children struggling. But if my child comes to me struggling, and I as a parent say, let's seek guidance and counseling, let's talk to our pastor, let's work through some of these issues, potentially, especially if the school got wind, if we had people, like you said, in the school districts who were guiding and counseling these children in another direction, I could actually be seen as infringing on my child's right.
Yes. That's
And
the,
then I
that's
would
the right of
be-
the child the UN was getting
Yes.
at in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And
Now, does it spell it out like that? Does it say parents could be held liable or responsible? No, it doesn't spell that out, but that's what it means.
That's
That's
correct.
the implications.
Yeah. And
Of the
so
way it's written.
Senator Mike Moon's legislation to delay until
Yes.
18 any decision to do this transition
Right.
would be overturned.
Right. It would become unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah.
And, I was very much part of that fight in 2023 to get the SAFE Act passed. And I believe that most of Missouri agrees with that legislation.
Yes.
But
let the child develop.
Let them develop, let them, become an adult and then decide. It's heinous what happens, and I've met some of these I've met a couple of young ladies through that process, and even people who have transitioned and then regretted, even transitioned as adults. I've talked to several now people who have transitioned, and even they say, Jodi, this isn't something a child should be doing. It's a horrendous process. It's
Painful.
very painful. It's an emotional roller coaster because they're taking hormones in giant proportions. So, even a lot of that community says this isn't something that's appropriate for a child. That law would be overturned.
That's right.
And there are several other things in place that I believe Missourians appreciate, safeguards in place, that would likely be overturned. And that's something else about this amendment that most voters don't know or understand.
And that's something to think about too, because the detransitioners you're talking about aren't necessarily protected in this. But wouldn't that be reproductive freedom too?
It should, yeah. I mean, it would be, but
Well, here's the deal. Planned Parenthood gets a lot of money from Medicaid.
yeah.
And it's not just for, Pap smears and
No.
breast
No.
health.
No.
It's for the drugs.
Yes, that's their second largest. It's my understanding that it's their second largest stream of income is gender counseling
I know
and
they
gender
are the
therapy.
second largest distributor
Yeah.
in the country for this. And in April, the Biden-Harris administration in Health and Human Services, HHS, modified their rule so that all health care to all communities, and this is how they make the vague language cover all
Right.
of everything without restricting by enumerating, right?
Yep.
And so when you think about Medicaid expansion in Missouri, okay, and the expansion of the rule to cover this kind of thing, any child on Medicaid, when a parent whose child has an IEP is basically allows the school district to have access to the Medicaid coverage insurance, then the school district has access.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
and here it's couched also in terms of mental health. This is a mental health aspect. We're trying to make your child mentally healthy by matching their body with what they are thinking in their head.
That's a huge thing. And in all of the situations that I've personally, these people that I met in 2023 who had been through this process.
Like Coey Coleman.
Yeah, exactly. Their parents had literally been told, would you rather have a boy who's alive or a daughter who's dead?
Yeah.
Like they've literally been told those
Which
things.
is a false dichotomy.
It's
right?
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But as a parent who is afraid and they're trusting these professionals, they get led down this path, and the drugs, and it's just my opinion, but the drugs to me are even more harmful than sometimes the surgery.
Even to take the discussion away from this, how do I call it, artificial introduction of hormones. Let's just go to the natural introduction of hormones to your teenager's brain, okay? When I would talk to parents about it, I would say, now, how is your teenager like a pregnant woman? And they're going, what? I'm going, so a pregnant woman's in the audience. I said, tell me how you behave differently when you're pregnant than when you're not. And they're go like, well, I cry at the drop of a hat. Right. I'm hungry all the time. Right. My emotions are flip-flop throughout the day. Right. That's normal because your body is normally introducing hormones. Now what you're doing to this developing person who has all of this, erratic distribution of new hormones introduced into their body, you're going to introduce artificial hormones too. Tell me how that's going to work for you, okay? Because you have to do constant monitoring.
Yeah, and they're just such large doses.
And large doses.
The people that I met in their early 20s, after they had literally started these drugs at 14, 15, 16 years old, were already suffering from degenerative bone loss, osteoporosis. They were in an incredible amount of pain.
Yeah.
She couldn't even attend a full day of class in college because she was in so much pain.
Yeah.
So it's forever changed the trajectory of her life.
Yeah. And that's a medical community that says we're here to help, that doesn't tell you the full story, is not really giving you authority over your body.
Right.
And I think that's the hypocrisy of the messaging. It's always true that you should follow the money, and that this creates a permanent market for
Yes.
the medical community.
Absolutely.
You have to think of it kind of like the addiction of the cigarette companies seeding basically it was a drug into cigarettes to hook children so they would have a lifetime consumer group.
Right.
Right? But as in both cases, there are negative consequences to the quality of your life and the extent of your life. But they don't go there.
Right.
Because to them, it's momentary happiness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings me to another issue is, if we're going to talk about mental health, the satisfaction, you'll see research that talks about the satisfaction and I guess you could say happiness level. I'm not sure what metric what label they give the metric, but you'll see that their satisfaction increases right after the surgery. Well, yeah, but what happens 6 months, 12 months down the road? Think of that young person who assumed the name Jazz down in Florida. A television show was made about that particular case. You don't hear anything about him anymore. Well, transition to a female. What happened to Jazz? People should be asking that question. What happened to Jazz? And the bottom line I'm trying to get at is that this targets people with disabilities whose disability is in the mental health area, okay? They don't honor, and this comes right off the Planned Parenthood website, what to expect on your first visit. They said that they can write prescriptions for your hormones without a doctor's letter for affirming mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible to me. Like, it's mind-blowing that it's actually happening.
Now, they say they can't administer these prescriptions before 16, but if this amendment passes, yes,
They will.
can.
Yeah,
Yes,
they will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it changes everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything. And we have to be, anybody who's listening to this program, this isn't just about your ears. You need to share this information with other people in your network. Get the word out there. Yes, we are here in Missouri dealing with this very, I call it onerous piece of legislation that's on the ballot for the people to vote for, but there are 9 other states with similar situations. So I would say that you have, if you're a believer, you have a responsibility to honor God, to honor his children pre-born, and those who are going through another kind of birthing process, birthing into adults, right? That God loves his creation. He sent his own son to go through the same processes. It might be difficult for some, more difficult for some people than others, again, because of the emotional constitution that they were given, situations in life that put additional stressors on those kids. But the introduction of hormones of artificial hormones, is not going to relieve those stresses.
No.
Right? And it
No.
could add another element. Yeah, I think that's the message, is that if you're not getting the whole story, the thing to do is it's kind of maintain the status quo and figure out a better way.
Right.
Yeah. So you have this wonderful marked up copy of Amendment 3. Is this available on your website?
I did my best. Yes, it is. It's just, and I put all of these resources related to the amendment right on the homepage, so nobody even had to click a different page. They could just go to the homepage and scroll down. So it's jodigrace.com. I do have a link to the full text of the amendment on the Secretary of State's website, but for some people that was, they had lots of questions. So I thought, well, maybe this would be of service to some people to be able to print that out.
Yes, especially if they're not used to reading legislation. And if you come at the text of a bill from your own world experience and you don't understand how the opposition is doing wordplay, then you're going to read into it what you want it to say.
Right.
And you want it to say, oh, they wouldn't hurt kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's
but they don't believe it's hurt.
Right. And I think that's what maybe I believe probably the majority of Missourians who, like I said, maybe they're generally pro-life, but they believe in the exceptions or, early abortion or whatever. They really can't fathom it's that cognitive dissonance. They can't fathom.
I wouldn't hurt anybody. Why would
Right.
anybody
Why would
else?
they wouldn't
Yes.
do that? They wouldn't do that. Nobody would do that. And I understand that that's hard to reconcile because it is heinous. but they actually would do that, and they are doing that. And they're doing it in such a way that they'll do it and you won't even know what's happening until it's too late, and they'll have the power to actually achieve their goal.
Yeah. Yeah, which is
So-
it's something that Seth Gruber, I mentioned this book last week. Jodi, as a matter of fact, was a speaker at the Social Impact Conference in the beginning of September that we announced to you. I think we had several months where we had different speakers come on to ensure that all aspects of the upcoming conference was addressed. But that conference has come and gone. But I want to mention it because you were one of the speakers on the panel about this issue.
Yeah.
What was your major takeaway from that conference?
From the conference,
Yeah.
I was well pleased with a church really full of
700 people.
Yeah, church full of people. I think they were all very interested. It was encouraging to me to see so many people gathered there who were truly interested and passionate about the issue. I believe they came to be equipped. And it speaks to me again that I do believe most people want to be equipped with the knowledge and information. And Seth Gruber was phenomenal.
Yes.
He's incredible.
His book is called The 1916 Project. There's a documentary associated with this book that will be released for free on X, is my understanding.
Yeah, there are several people I know, sort of organizations having watch parties and doing screenings and things like that. And I haven't seen it yet myself, but I'm sure it's fantastic.
So if you
He's
go
incredible.
to his website, the White Rose Resistance, this will be featured, and you can contact that organization and make arrangements for your own screening. I know that they have a listing of where it's being shown, and it has been shown in the St. Louis area, but I will tell you, because I'm on certain email lists, they're targeting Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's been shown there. I know there's a gal over there who's very involved with the White Rose Resistance, I believe, and
Jill.
that organization. So I know they're doing a lot in the Kansas City area.
Wonderful. Yeah. But that doesn't absolve you from your part. Everybody has to be talking about this. Everybody has to download from Jodi.
Jodi Grace, Jodi, grace.com. And yeah, there are several different resources there actually. And I even designed some postcards and palm cards, signs if you want, something to actually give to someone. They're just free downloads. You can download and print them however you like. If you would like to have some talking points, to share with your friends and family.
Insert them in church bulletins.
Insert them in the church bulletin. Talk with your pastor. I believe, you mentioned when we first started the amount of money that's coming in from out of state, even internationally.
'Cause this
I
is big
believe
dollars.
it's $20+ million at this point. And
Think of it. It's not just Planned Parenthood. It's the pharmaceutical companies behind it that are making a profit out of this.
Yeah.
The hospitals that do the treatments.
So when you consider that amount of money, and I've been involved in some campaign, in the campaign world a little bit also, so I'm familiar with the dollars it actually takes to run a commercial for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. I'm familiar with some of that data. The Vote No on 3 movement is very grassroots. We do not have $20 million, so I would say we could expect to feel completely saturated with a vote yes message from the opposition starting really any day now. On all channels, on all social media outlets, we will feel like we are completely saturated with that. So it's really important for you to, I believe, the path that we do have to defeating this is through the church. The pastors do have the audience of voters every single week if they will rise up and speak.
So one of the scriptures I gave my pastor is Ezekiel 9, where God is speaking to Ezekiel, and he says, "Do you see the violence in my cities?" And he says, in the vision, "Go through and mark the foreheads of the people who grieve with me," right? Because judgment is coming. And so when God is ready for distributing his judgment, he says, "Start with my sanctuary."
That's right.
Pastors, that's where you are. That's where you are.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to read Ezekiel 9. This isn't my threat. I don't think God is threatening. God is giving you the grace and the mercy to say, if you're really in my camp, you do the work of the Father.
Right.
And as we discussed earlier, we opened the show saying the Father loves his world. The Father loves the part of his creation that is made in his image in Genesis. Everything else was good, but man was very good. There is a special place in his heart for man made in his image. And that makes you a target for the deceiver who would say, "You will be like God." And that's very tempting, right? To have power over life and death.
Right.
But God is, the whole message in the scripture is, no, that's not your role. That's not your role. So, pastors, I encourage you to immerse yourself in Ezekiel 9. Immerse yourself in information about what is happening nationally since the overturn of Roe versus Wade. And if you're in the particular states I mentioned before, and for us it's in Missouri, make sure that you use the position God has put you in to bring about the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven.
And I would say even, speaking of other states, I don't know how many people really know that when you see these nationwide pushes of this policy, even though we're in Missouri, these other states probably are seeing the exact same language, or very, very close to the same language that we're seeing in Missouri. And even if your state isn't on that list, it would probably behoove everybody to become familiar.
Yes.
Because if it's not
Yeah.
in your state yet, it's coming.
Yeah, that's right. Let me read the list again. Arizona, South Dakota, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, and New York. All right. So we look forward to a victory. We look forward to everyone gathering under the banner of that victory with God as he uses you to preserve his children. All right? So thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And until then, God bless.